Okay, so I want to briefly talk to you about my autism. I'm on the autistic spectrum, temporal grandin my life, pictures my life with autism. Now, in my case, there are a couple things you have to look for behavioral because autism exists on a continuum. It's a spectrum, and there's a whole different uh, spectrum of types of people. Now, basically, number one is specialized interests, hyper focus on very narrow interests, whether it be tennis, whether it be poker, whether for a time it's pool or lifting weights, whatever the focus is for that period of time. It's going to be like your life centers around just that focus. You're going to study it, you're going to talk about it, you're going to do it, and you're not going to do much else. There's a hyper focus. There's also rotating special interests where once you're done with an activity, maybe it exhausts itself. It's like that activity wasn't there in the first place. You can go back to it and then maybe it'll ignite that interest, but it's basically a rotating special interest. The other thing about it is repetitive behavior that's considered to be self-stim. It exists on a continuum. You might have someone very low on the spectrum. You might have someone hopefully considered to be higher up on the spectrum, but it's still on the spectrum. It's still autistic. Repetitive behavior, in my case, it manifests itself in terms of movement. Repetitive walking, repetitive driving, perhaps the same song listened to over and over and over again, and repetitive behavior that's a form of self stimulation that doesn't necessarily have an end in itself other than a form of self stimulation. There was an example of a woman at Planet Fitness who was on the spectrum who's probably, maybe she has a lot of things that, a lot of abilities that I don't know about, or maybe I don't know where she is on the continuum, but she was autistic and she was just bouncing a ball, almost void of anyone's opinion of her inappropriate behavior. She didn't care. She's just bouncing the ball. Okay? She was getting self stim out of it. A person on the autistic spectrum is not going to say, I'm self stimming, but let me concern myself with what everyone else thinks. I don't give a shit. Okay? I'm law abiding. I'm doing something that's stimming me. I don't give a shit. You think it's weird? Perfect. I don't give a shit. All right. So, other things you're going to see about autism is this speech. And social deficits. I went to Karen Clapper in the late 2000s for a year specifically to work on speech. Part of it was her telling me do these YouTube videos and work on speech in terms of presenting your ideas, which I'm better at, mind you, than an interaction which involves more the flow and conversation with the neurotypical, which is harder for me to do. I can do it, but it's harder for me to do. When I'm just sitting here in a monologue giving you my ideas, if you've managed to get to this far, you can see that I can go on and on about it. But basically, when you're involved in a conversation, it's something totally different. Also, a neurotypical's brain is wired differently, where they're just naturally going to talk about and converse about things that typical people would converse with about at ease. Whereas for someone on the spectrum, it's not as easy, and what you talk about will be atypical and not a match for what they talk about. So it's going to require more effort. If they get into one of your areas like NFL's an interest, sometimes I'm interested in UFC, maybe talking about poker, maybe I used to be interested in tennis, maybe talking about tennis. If it's an area that's in your narrow special interest, they might start engaging you for a while, like, hey, this guy knows what he's talking about. But then the conversation, as it typically would, veers into just typical small talk. Now suddenly you are not as competent, not nearly as competent, and not on the level of a neurotypical. They might say, what happened? Well, you're on the spectrum. Another thing about it is as far as there's repetitive behavior, the specialized interest, different set of social needs. For a person on the autistic spectrum, it's not the same thing for me to be alone or to not have friends or to not have a girlfriend or a wife. It's not the same thing. It not only doesn't bother me, I view it as unnecessary. It's just not the same thing for me. It's not something that's like, oh, now I'm upset. I can't hang out with people, or I don't have a wife, or I don't have a girlfriend. I'm autistic. I don't want to say I don't care. I'm not trying to develop friendships. I'm not trying to develop a girlfriend or a wife. I'm not trying to, particularly with my financial situation, come up with a situation where I court a woman, then we go out 4 or 5 times, then we fuck, and now I got a baby. And now I'm responsible for that baby, raising the baby, and also being around her as an autistic person, which isn't as always fluid and what you'd expect as you'd think as with a person with autism. So that's not really something I'm trying to do, but it's not like, oh, well, now I'm bothered. No, I'm not. I'm just autistic. I got an absence account on 2 plus 2 poker. I haven't had sex in 9 years, practicing sexual absence for life. It's not a problem for me. It's not like, hey, this is really hard. It's just like, it's like, hey, let me show you how difficult. I just had a sip of soda. That was the difficulty level of doing that. Like, it's not difficult for me. Now, the other thing about autism, and to put this in the context, is this. Some people on the spectrum are not as coordinated, not as mechanically inclined, not as spatially inclined, and also not as strong. There's different types of autism. I'm 5'11". I'm 183 pounds. Okay? If I stand up, I have a healthy build, right? I'm basically strong. When I'm not injured, okay, I did on the Smith machine 400 for 10. Now I am injured, so I did 135 for 35. It's a healthy lift. With that being said, I have a healthy, I don't know what you want to call it, metabolism. I have a healthy sex drive. So if I pop one off to a porn compilation gif and some blonde babes bouncing up and down with their tits, well, I'm going to pop one off in 5 minutes. I'm not going to sit under those covers and say, hey, let me visualize Johanna with her tits bouncing all 45 times I had sex in my life with all 11 different women, starting in 2000, ending in 2012. Which for an autistic guy is like, hey man, I got laid. So don't, it's like for an autistic person, those are pretty good numbers. Okay, so I'm not going to sit there doing that. I'm devoutly Christian, but I'm a sinner. Now, like on military bases, they used to have Penthouse and Playboy, which would make fucking sense, right? Like an outlet. Like if you get so Christian that it's like, hey, let's not have Playboys and Penthouses here, then I'm actually starting to wonder about the military base. Like, well, what's the outlet? Because honestly, in Vietnam and before that, when a sergeant or a captain was like, here's some recruit or here's some new guy who hasn't been laid, here's $200, take him to a brothel, get him laid. Like, you don't even arrest a George Johnson in the United States. You just don't. So, like, there's Christian that's a sinner, and then there's some kind of Christian that's awkwardly goody goody. That's all I'm going to say, because that's fucked up. Now, I'm going to tell you this. I have a healthy sex drive. Once, maybe twice a night, I'll porn compilation GIF 36, 26, 36, and she's talking dirty and spitting with a potty mouth. Let me tell you how that works. Hypothalamus, dopamine, serotonin, norepinephrine starts firing. The hypothalamus shoots a signal to my gonads, which are healthy. Within honestly 5 seconds, blood starts flowing to my large monster dong. From the back, it's literally 9 inches. From the side, it's 8 inches, and from the front, it's 7 3/4. Again, autism, I don't give a shit about political correctness or your opinion on this video. If you don't like it, don't fucking watch it. Now, within 10 seconds, I'm up. I do this motion. Guess what? Stern face. Would you want to watch Temple Grandin masturbating? I wouldn't. Who knows what's going on in her mind? Who knows what she's thinking about? Who knows what she's looking at? But she's autistic. She masturbates. She plays with herself. It's probably really stern. Look, I do 400 pounds for 10 reps. When I pop one off, I'm not the most expressive person. Probably, really like into it, and then boom, it happens. But here's the thing. It's not. I don't have the same set of social needs as a neurotypical, right? Like I'm not like, oh, well, I'm not hanging out with people. If I'm playing tennis, well, then if I'm not hitting on a wall, excuse me, then I need somebody to hit with. Well, I'll practice. Hey, how you doing? What's going on? Yeah, you catch that game? No problem. But then I'm focused on let's play tennis. And during the tennis, it's more about I'm a pretty good player, 5-0 plus when I'm playing. And when I'm playing, like I was singles and doubles club champion 2015, I was known to be more like a good guy, say a few things, how you doing, funny, but more like all business. Like there was a club captain, Jack Rouleau, who's an FBI agent. He's like, well, won the tournament, singles and doubles. Like, Eric, you're all business. You come here, you win. Now, he was he was helping me along because he recognized some deficits. I don't know if you know I was autistic, but he recognized some social deficits. He was helping me. He recognized I won that tournament. He said, "You're all business, man. You come here, you play, you win, you leave. You're all business." So he was kind of putting a positive spin on that, and I could see that. But that's what I was known for. It's not like I'm going to be out there by the water cooler and we're talking or everybody's coming up to me. But on the other hand, it's like, hey, he's a good guy. He's funny. Like, he's a tough guy, gets along, and he comes here, he plays, he practices. It's more about the practice and the activity. Same when I'm playing pool. When I'm lifting weights, I like to do that myself. And if I'm practicing one of my special interests, like when I play poker, that's obviously solitary. Or if I'm playing live, I tend to just focus on the cards and read the players. But it's not the same thing. So basically, I am on the spectrum. My disorder manifests itself in terms of movement, constantly needing to move, and repetitive behavior, which can be a problem because the movement is, I don't want to say it's a need. That can be a problem in terms of life needs and life work and life situation because I need to move. I need to walk around and drive around and move around. And there is things with autism about sensory overload, not responding normally, which can happen to a person. Other thing about people in the autism, they tend to have their environments very simplistic, very clean, very orderly, and it tends to be a routine that is repetitive and consistent, and they don't like too much variation to that routine or things intruding upon the routine. They can be explosive in their responses when they feel like they're being intruded upon, or injustice or things being done to them that should not be done. But as far as the spectrum, there's a continuum, okay? There is a continuum to autism, and you have to look for underlying behaviors and characteristics rather than, oh, does this person come off as autistic? Like, there's a continuum to it. It's not like, no. There's just a continuum to it, to underlying behaviors and characteristics that if you observe closely, you can identify and pick up autism people who you might think, no, this person's more normal. It doesn't work like that. The fact is, there's differences between Asperger's and autism. Asperger's are less socially able than people with autism, believe it or not. Asperger's are known to be annoyingly awkward, annoyingly so. Autistic people are just known to be awkward, like strange, like not strange, but like a little different. Okay, and it's a continuum. Asperger's people have said, Eric, you're fucking obnoxious. You're blunt. You don't give a shit, and you are obnoxious. I say, hey, thank you. I'm law-abiding. Go fuck yourself. Here's the thing. Asperger's is throw up around you socially, and autism is more like this is just obnoxious and inappropriate and strange. But it's kind of funny, it's tough, and sort of in some ways likable sometimes. And if I were to say, I don't like this change of behavior, he would look at it and say, am I doing something unlawful or do I need to change my behavior? Then he'd tell me to go fuck myself. And then after that, if I got to a physical confrontation with this person, this is not a person who will back down. I would fuck you up. And be fucked up in the process. Not as like I go around like, hey man, I'm gonna throw my elbow at you and not be hit or have a broken rib. Or get punched in the face and then have dental surgery. It's not as like you're in a hospital, this is bullshit. I kick the wall and then I'm tased. It's not as like nothing's going to happen to me. It's like you've just intruded on my territory. I don't give a shit that I just offended you. I'm not going to tell you to back up or go on with warnings and then we just look at each other. It's like, hey, who won there? I will literally take this elbow once you encroach, put it across your fucking forehead. And then we can go, and then I can expect the people around you to do things to me where we'll go too. I'm not going to sit here because you think, oh, this offends me. I don't give a shit. Go fuck yourself.